In the previous lesson, we covered some of the best practices in editing parametric avatars. In this lesson, we show the best practices in adjusting older parametric avatars, like Deborah and Adam. We highly recommend using newer avatars like Olivia or Oliver. However, if there is a need to use the older avatars, where the sliders are different, the following points should help. Before creating an avatar, it is important to see the type of body required. We would normally use Deborah for an average female avatar. If we are creating a plus-size female avatar, we can start editing with Rachel. There are also young adult, child, and baby avatars we can use. Let's start with Deborah. We'll adjust her from top to bottom to match the specs by placing her image and the spec sheet in the 2D window in VStitcher. First, we match Deborah's height and body silhouette to the specs on the spec sheet. In this case, we assign a body size of 0.1. Next, let's fill in the values for Deborah's torso sliders. For some sliders, we cannot enter exact measurements for Deborah or older avatars. Instead, we use the sliders to select a value between -0.5 and 0.5. To know the measurement for such sliders, we use the 3D measure tape to measure the distance from Deborah's nape to her waist. Then we adjust the nape to waist value so that it roughly matches the spec values. We can adjust the slider later if necessary. We will adjust the shoulder slope and cup after we made the comparison of the body shaping. Great! Let's adjust the sliders in the leg section. In older avatars, like Deborah, we can use the XO leg to adjust her knee position. Since the intended version of Avatar Deborah has no feet, we leave the last two sliders for feet as they are. Now let's adjust the hand sliders. Older avatars use body shaping methods that differ from those of the newer avatars. Let's adjust the sliders by referencing the images. First, we adjust the armpit opening slightly. Now we adjust the posture and bottom posture to 0.1. The lower torso is further back in the image. -0.5 looks about right. We adjust the shoulder position slightly. The build slider can give Deborah more body tone. And adjusting full proportions can redistribute body tissue. Since this adjustment does not affect the circumference we set before, using the full proportion slider will just make Deborah wider. Let's leave it at 0. Let's leave the buttocks proportions, volume, tone, and depth sliders as they are for now. We can adjust the chest volume sliders to move up the chest rib cage if needed. We can use the heel slider if we want to dress Deborah in heels. The straight hand slider adjusts the angle of Deborah's hand. Let's use a 3D measuring tape to check how full Deborah's upper bust should be. Since the upper bust measurements are fine, we leave them as they are. Let's move Deborah's breast position up slightly, around 0.1, and change her breast diameter to -0.2. We can widen the crotch area for garments like swimwear if needed. Navel height refers to the position of the belly button on the abdomen. Next, we use the 3D measure tape to adjust the apex to apex. To know where to measure from, we move the nipple slider all the way to the end. Since 0.1 looks about right, we slide the nipple slider back to 0. We would adjust the remaining sliders if we were creating specialized garments like lingerie or activewear. Note: we cannot mold compression or wired garments to a hard body avatar. It first needs reshaping, and then dressing and fitting those types of garments to the avatar. We check the values and click Save. We must match Deborah's pose to the image by putting her arms down and rechecking the 3D measurements. If any measurements are incorrect, we move the sliders to adjust them. We click Save and then recheck the measurements again. Deborah's shoulders look too wide, so let's use the 3D measuring tape to check her shoulder measurements. We adjust her shoulder sliders slightly. Then we put her arms down and check the shoulder measurements again. Since her shoulders still seem too wide, we readjust Deborah and repeat the process until her shoulder measurements match the spec sheet. This looks much better. Finally, we render Deborah again and place her on the image of the intended avatar. You can use this as practice to adjust the avatars. We make any adjustments to body shaping and again compare Deborah to the intended avatar. The main differences between older and newer avatars are in the slider types and the body shaping options. We need to use the 3D measuring tape along with slider adjustments in the older avatars. For more information, visit our Help Center at support.browseware.com.